Hello again, everyone. I'm Rob Mize, and today I'm here once again to celebrate the beauty of After Effects shapes. Whether you're cleaning up a client's logo or creating an original graphic from scratch, After Effects shapes are a powerful tool for bringing your vision to life. What I'd like to do here is highlight those features that make shapes so functional and versatile. So with that in mind, may I present my Top 10 countdown of After Effects shape features. To do this, I'll share a project in which I used street signs as a transition device. Considering the time required to locate and shoot the signs, clean them up, customize them, I realized I could save myself considerable trouble by using shapes to make my own. So first on my top 10 list of what makes shapes so great are the shapes themselves. Now I have a comp here, 1280 by 720, that I've created and named signs. And let's take a look at our shape and mask tools. Using these, I can create a variety of parametric shapes, like this rectangle. I'll double click this, and I have a rectangle created to comp size. Now I can change this as far as its aspect and its size, but I can't really change the shape using the vertices the way I can with a shape that I create with my pen tool. Shape created with the pen tool is a Bezier shape, and you have these handles that let you manipulate this and move it in whatever fashion you need to. By using both the Parametric shape tools and the Bezier pen tool, you can create just about any shape you can think of. Now let me get rid of this and go to the next item on my top 10 list, and that is the stroke. I'll choose my rounded rectangle and just bring that out like so, and come up here and adjust this stroke value to put a stroke around the shape. And just like that, I've got a background for my street sign. All I need to do is just come up here and add some text. I'll call this Shape City, this exit. I'll sample this color so our text looks like it belongs on that sign. If I had done this without shapes, I would have created a solid, I would have drawn a mask around that solid, and then I would have used a generate stroke effect to create the stroke around the shape. This way, I just drag my mouse, create the rectangle, and make the adjustment here on my stroke to get that where I want it. Let me show you another thing about the stroke. You have a lot of options here. If you open this up, you can see that you can click this plus sign next to your dashes, and suddenly you've got dashes going around instead of a solid stroke. You can animate those if you want to using the offset. You can also change the shape of those dashes by changing the line cap to a round cap, a projecting cap, or the default is the butt cap. You can change the way that the stroke lines join each other. So you have a lot of options here. I'm going to take those dashes off and make that back to a solid stroke. I'll turn off the visibility for the rectangle and also my text, and I will add another rectangle, a long narrow one right here like so, and I'll add an ellipse to this. Come here to about this point, and holding down Shift Command, I get a perfect circle that emanates from my start point. And we'll click on Contents and then click on the Add button here to reveal number 8 in our list of top 10 features, and that is Merge Paths. And as we add that Merge Paths, you can see what's happened here is that these two objects have been combined to create another object. And in fact, if I turn on my rectangle that we created earlier, you can see that it also has become part of this more complex object by using the Merge Paths operator. Now, where this is placed matters. That is, if I take this and move it up over my first rectangle, you can see it is no longer part of that merged path. And even though this is part of the group of path operators, I think it deserves to be listed on its own because of the way it allows you to combine various shapes to create more complex shapes. But in this case, I'm going to use it a little bit differently. I'm going to bring my ellipse under the rectangle. I'm going to bring this original rectangle down to the bottom of this list of contents. I'll turn that off again. And I'm going to open up Merge Paths and change this mode from Add to Subtract. And now you see what's happened. This acts as a mask now, removing that ellipse shape from these merged paths. Let me reduce the size of this ellipse some. I want it just about like so, so that it creates a hole in our rectangle. Now, just like merged paths, our next top 10 shape feature are the other path operations located under the Add button. And in this case, I'm going to use Repeater. I'll open up the repeater and the transform control on that repeater, and I'm going to change position here on the x-axis to 0. And I'm going to increase it on the y-axis, and you will see what happens. I separate the copies that my repeater has created. I'm going to add a few more there and close these up some. In fact, let me change the position of that ellipse path, bring that up toward the top, and let's take the stroke off these shapes. Now, if I adjust this, nothing's happened. Why? Because now we have merged these paths. So let's go to our Merge Path control and adjust the stroke there, and you see we lose it on our shapes. I'll open ellipse back up. I want to create a couple of more holes in my rectangle like so. And let me move that over just a little bit to get that more centered. Let me come up to my ellipse path and move that about there. I'm also going to come in here and add a bevel alpha effect. I think that gives it a little bit of dimension there that we didn't have before. I believe I'm also going to bring that size down just a bit, say about like so. I encourage you to experiment with these operators. You can get a lot of really neat effects using them singly and in combination. If I come down here to Merge Paths and add, let's say, the twist operator, we can get kind of a cool look right there. And keep in mind, you can animate these parameters. Let's add just for fun, let's add the pucker and bloat to that. And you see you can really come up with some wild looks on these. So play with those path operators and see what you come up with. Now I'll remove those for the project that we're working on. And let's go to number 6 on our top 10 countdown of shape features. And again, we'll find that under the Add button, and that is the ability to group items under you might think of this as a sublayer. I'll take the rectangle, the ellipse, our merge path, along with its stroke and fill properties, and just move those into this group. Now, all these items are controlled by the transform in this group. So we see if we move that, everything moves as one item. Now our next top 10 feature is color, and in particular gradients is what I want to look at. So if we want to adjust a gradient, here with shapes, it's really quite easy. We can come up here and click on our fill, and you can see we can choose to have no fill, a solid fill, a radial gradient, or a linear gradient. And in this case, I'm going to choose linear. And if we click on the color chip here, you can see that I've added a couple of color stops so that I have a darker area in the center of my gradient. I'll click OK and click on that group, and I have a couple of control points here. And that lets me bring this gradient right here on the screen just to where I want it. And that is actually about what I want. Trying to get the sense of some dimension here, some shape, if you will, to the shape that we've created. And so I have a darker area in the center with highlights on either end. Bring that in just a bit. And I think I'm going to open up this group and get back to my ellipse path and adjust that size a tiny bit more, make those a little bit smaller. You can see they're all adjusted by this one control. And I believe that I'll open up this repeater and the repeater transform and close the gap between those a little bit, more about like that. That's what I'm looking for. The ability to control this on the screen with these control points makes the gradient feature one that's very easy to use. Next on our top 10 countdown, at number 4, is independent animation. And what I mean by that is the ability to take the various elements in this one layer and independently animate them. So if I add my rectangle, I'll bring this back on top of the group, and let me place it about the center of our screen, and let me place the group about like so. Let's come back to this rectangle and put our stroke back on. I think we removed that earlier when I made an adjustment. So now we have a street sign and the pole that holds it up. And we can independently animate these. So let's open up our rectangle and let's look at the transform rectangle controls, and I'm going to add a position keyframe there. I'll open up the group, and on the group transform controls, I can close that repeater. On the group transform controls down here, I can add a keyframe there. I'll hit U so that I only see those keyframes I added. Bring this forward a little bit, and I will grab this rectangle and let's pull it over to the side. Let's grab our group and pull it down out of the frame, and now I have independent animation of those two elements. Now I also can hit P to reveal the position parameter for this entire layer. And I can click that to add a keyframe, come forward a little bit, and now I animate the entire layer. So if I hit U and see all the keyframes I've added, you see that first we're independently animating these two objects, and now we are animating the entire layer, and both objects move in concert off the screen. So that gives you a lot of options there when you're doing your animation, and it lets you reduce the number of layers that you have in your composition. And I just find that much simpler for me if I can do that. Again, I think of these various shapes. If we open this shape layer up, I think of these various shapes as almost sublayers. And as we group things, we can even create more sublayers. Now, our next feature is one that I've found especially useful, and that is the ability to copy masks and motion paths and paste them into shape paths. If you saw my last tutorial on shapes and vector art, by using this feature, we improved a low-quality logo with just a few simple steps. And we'll use those same techniques for the next sign we'll create. Let's come over here to our project, and I'm going to bring this interstate sign. I just Googled street signs and saved this one to use as a model for what we're going to do. I'll turn off that shape layer there and select my interstate sign, come up here to Layer, Auto Trace. And we're going to auto trace the current frame based on the luminance channel. I do not want to apply that trace to a new layer, and you can preview what's going to be traced here. That looks good to me. So we'll leave the threshold and corner roundness and the other settings as they are. Okay? And we've created a series of masks based on the luminance channel. I'll create a new shape layer with no layer selected. I'll grab my pen tool and just click 1, 2, 3, 4 and make a triangle there. I'll take off that stroke. I'll open up that layer that I've just created and choose that first shape and use Command D to duplicate that twice for a total of 3 shapes. Now, coming to our interstate sign, I'll hit M to reveal the masks that we auto-traced. And I'll select, I'm holding down Command to change my pen tool there where I can select this mask. I'll click that mask path and Command C, copy it. I'll open up Shape 1 and Path 1, click on the path and Command V to paste that shape onto this shape path. Now let me move this street sign over a bit so that I can get to it. Let me select these 3 shapes and change my fill to a solid fill instead of a gradient. I'll open up that fill, grab the eyedropper and sample this white, and there we go. Now let me come back to my interstate sign and grab this mask around the red portion there. Come down to the layer. I see that that's mask 2. It's been highlighted since that's what we selected. Command C will copy that mask shape. Open up shape 2, path 1, and Command V will paste that shape onto the triangle we originally had. And you see that it also pastes it in the original location of the graphic. So we were able to move that graphic and the pasted path goes to where the graphic was originally located. Open up Fill, sample that red. Let's get our blue shape. That looks like mask 3. Oh, you hear him testing the fire alarm here. There we go. Okay, Command C will copy that mask path. Come up here to shape 3, open up our path, and Command V will paste it there into our shape layer. And we'll open up the fill on that, and again, sample the color, and there's our interstate sign. And again, all we need to do is let's create a new layer of text, and we'll call this Shapes Top 10. Let me click on that and sample that white color. And let's bring those shapes size down a little bit and locate that about there. Top 10, I'll make that a bit larger. I like the way that you can independently size and color and apply different characteristics to the same layer of text. Again, I find that that results in fewer layers. Okay, we'll adjust the leading there. And there is our interstate sign. which brings us to our next feature on our top 10 countdown. And again, that feature goes back to our last tutorial on shapes, and that is vector art. Vector art is a shape that is created by a series of connected points rather than raster art, which is created by a specific number of colored pixels. The result is that with vector art you have a graphic that retains its resolution no matter how much you scale it. So if we look at this layer and hit S to reveal our scaling parameters, we can bring that up. Oh, let's go ahead and parent that text to our shape so that when we bring that up, it comes up as well. And we see that even as we get quite large, those edges still stay just as sharp as they can be. Bring that on up. And again, you can keep scaling this up and up and up and up, and those edges are just going to remain crisp as they can be. I see a little place here on our shape that we can correct, and then let me hit G to cycle through my pen tools, and I will just let's see, when I see my pen tool with a minus there, and I'll just take away a couple of those points, and there. It's that easy to adjust these shapes. Let's change that back to 100 and position that back to where we had it originally. If we're so inclined, we can take the pole from our original shape and use it for our new interstate sign here. Let's scale this up a little bit and bring this down. And of course, I am inclined to add a bevel alpha. I just like the dimension that it seems to give to objects, provides a little bit of shading, and to me it looks like it gives it some sense of thickness there. So finally, in our #1 spot on our top 10 countdown of favorite features of After Effects shapes is versatility and functionality. I add that really just to make it a top 10 countdown instead of a top 9 countdown, but I think it's also worth repeating just how versatile shapes are and just how functional they are to use. Considering that just about everything we see is nothing more than a collection of various shapes, there's really very little limit to what we can create with these. Even such as my lovely friend here, Candace Be Real.
Why, that's right, Rob. I myself am composed entirely of shapes, mostly curves, very few corners.
Well, thank you, Candace, and thanks to all of you for watching. Please let me know how these techniques are working for you. It's always a pleasure to see what you're working on. So until next time, this is Rob Mize. Candace, would you do the honors?
Wishing you all happy compositing!